The studio lights of the Kelly Clarkson Show gleamed with their usual brilliance. The audience buzzed with excitement, clapping in rhythm as the theme song wrapped up. On this particular morning, Kelly had promised viewers a special guest, one of the biggest names in country music, Keith Urban. The crowd's anticipation was electric. Kelly, smiling and brimming with her signature warmth, stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, you are in for a treat today," she said, her voice rising above the cheers. "A global superstar, an incredible musician, and someone I personally admire, please welcome, Keith Urban." The crowd erupted. Keith walked onto the set with his guitar slung over his shoulder. His relaxed Australian charm seemed intact, though there was a faint stiffness in his smile. He waved, shook Kelly's hand, and settled into the chair opposite her. At first, everything seemed ordinary. Kelly asked about his new tour, his recent work mentoring young artists, and his plans for the future. Keith answered with short, polite responses. But anyone paying attention could sense something simmering beneath the surface. Then came the moment that changed the tone. Kelly leaned forward. "So Keith," she began, "I read recently that you've been critical of how music reality shows, like American Idol or The Voice, affect young singers. You were a judge once, weren't you? What made you change your mind?" The audience gave a collective, "Ooh." It wasn't meant to be confrontational, but it struck a nerve. Keith's smile faltered. "Well, Kelly," he said, voice firm, "when I judged on American Idol, I genuinely believed the show could change lives. And it did, for some. But the industry has shifted. Now, I feel these shows sell dreams more than they support talent." Kelly, herself a product of American Idol, tilted her head. "But Keith, you can't deny shows like these give ordinary people a platform. I mean, I wouldn't even be here without Idol. Don't you think there's still real value in that?" The tension was palpable. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Keith leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I'm not denying your success, Kelly. You're an exception. But how many winners do we actually remember? How many of them get the kind of career you did? Most of them disappear after one album. That's the truth no one talks about." Kelly's smile tightened. "With all due respect, Keith, that sounds dismissive to the thousands of people who poured their hearts out on those stages. Those shows give hope to people who might otherwise never get a chance. I think that matters." The audience applauded her passionately, clearly siding with her. Keith's jaw clenched. He wasn't used to being challenged so directly, especially not on live television. "Hope is one thing. False hope is another," he shot back. "We put kids in the spotlight, make them think they're stars, and then the industry chews them up and spits them out. It's irresponsible." Kelly leaned back, her eyes narrowing slightly. "You're talking about responsibility, but isn't it also the responsibility of established artists like you to mentor and uplift? I mean, I've seen you bring contestants on stage, collaborate with them, and now you're saying it's all a lie." The room fell silent. The tension was unbearable. Keith hesitated, running a hand through his hair. His voice rose slightly. "I'm saying the machine is broken, Kelly. And maybe people like you, people who benefited from it, don't want to admit that because it feels personal. But it's not about you. It's about the hundreds of kids who'll never get a fair shot." Kelly's face flushed. "Keith, I've worked my entire life to prove myself beyond a TV show. I've built my career brick by brick. Don't you dare suggest it was handed to me." The audience gasped. Keith's chair screeched as he suddenly stood up. He slung his guitar over his shoulder, his face tight with anger. "I don't have to sit here and be attacked for telling the truth," he said sharply. The crowd erupted in shock, whispers sweeping through the studio. Kelly blinked, momentarily speechless. "Keith, wait," she called, half rising from her seat. "No one's attacking you, we're having a discussion." But Keith was already walking toward the exit, ignoring the cameras and the audience. The producers scrambled behind the scenes, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let the drama play out. The doors slammed as Keith Urban stormed off stage. Kelly, regaining her composure, turned back to the stunned audience. "Well," she said with a nervous laugh, "I guess that's one way to end an interview." The audience laughed uneasily, but the shock in the room lingered. Viewers at home immediately began tweeting, posting clips, and debating who was right, Kelly or Keith. And what had begun as a simple guest appearance now spiraled into one of the most talked about confrontations in daytime television. The clip of Keith Urban storming off set spread like wildfire. Within hours, the hashtag Keith vs Kelly trended on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Fans were divided, some defending Keith's criticism of the industry, while others rallied around Kelly, praising her professionalism in the face of his dramatic exit. The fallout. Backstage, Kelly remained composed for the cameras, but as soon as she was off set, her producers swarmed her. "Kelly, that was explosive TV." One of them said, half in panic and half in excitement. "The ratings will be through the roof." Kelly sighed. "This isn't about ratings. Keith's someone I respect. I didn't want it to go down like that." Meanwhile, Keith sat alone in his car outside the studio, his phone buzzing nonstop. Messages from his management, his publicist, and even fellow artists poured in. Some applauded him for telling the truth, but others warned that he had damaged his reputation by disrespecting Kelly Clarkson on her own show. His wife, Nicole Kidman, finally called Keith. She said calmly, "I saw the clip. Everyone has. What were you thinking?" Keith leaned his head against the steering wheel. I couldn't let it slide, Nick. These shows exploit people. I had to say it." But storming off. "That's not you," Nicole replied gently. "You're better than that. You need to fix this." The media storm. By the next morning, headlines dominated every major outlet. Keith Urban explodes at Kelly Clarkson, walks off set. Kelly handles live meltdown like a pro. Fans clash over who was right, Kelly or Keith. Morning shows replayed the clip endlessly. Pundits debated the ethics of reality TV. Even American Idol alums weighed in, with some siding with Keith's critique and others defending Kelly's perspective. On social media, one fan tweeted, "Greater than, Keith Urban is right. These shows chew people up. Kelly just doesn't want to admit it." Another countered, "Greater than, Kelly is proof that Idol can work." Keith was rude to storm off. Totally uncalled for. The debate wasn't dying down. Kelly speaks out. 2 days later, Kelly opened her show with a statement. Sitting on stage, she addressed her audience directly. "Look," she began, her voice steady but sincere, "I know everyone saw what happened when Keith Urban was here. I want to make it clear, I respect Keith as an artist and as a person. We may disagree about reality TV, but I'll always be grateful to American Idol for giving me my start. And I'll always fight for young singers to get their shot. That's who I am." The audience applauded warmly. Her grace only strengthened her public image. Keith responds. Keith, however, couldn't avoid the press. At a concert the following weekend, he addressed the issue head-on. Between songs, he spoke into the mic. "Some of you might have seen me lose my cool on Kelly Clarkson's show," he admitted. "I'm passionate about protecting young artists from a tough industry. But I also want to say, I love Kelly, I respect her, and I regret how I handled myself. She deserved better than me walking out like that." The crowd cheered. Clips of his apology went viral, softening some of the backlash. A private conversation. Later, Keith reached out to Kelly directly. They agreed to meet in private, away from cameras and headlines. At a quiet cafe in Nashville, Kelly greeted him with a cautious smile. "You made quite a scene, Urban." Keith chuckled awkwardly. "Yeah, not my proudest moment. I'm sorry, Kel. I didn't mean for it to turn into whatever that was." Kelly folded her arms but softened. "I get that you're passionate. I am too. But walking out, it felt like you weren't just dismissing the shows, you were dismissing me. And I've worked too hard for that." Keith nodded. "I know. And you're right. I was frustrated, but I took it out on you. That wasn't fair. Truth is, I admire how you turned Idol into a real career. Most people couldn't have done what you did." For a moment, they both laughed, the tension melting away. "You know what?" Kelly said. "How about we stop arguing about shows and do what we do best, sing?" Keith's eyes lit up. "Now that's a good idea." Redemption on stage. Weeks later, Kelly invited Keith back, not for an interview, but for a duet. When the episode aired, fans saw the two stars perform a powerful medley of their biggest hits. The performance ended with them hugging on stage, both smiling genuinely. The internet exploded again, but this time with praise. They turned a fight into the collaboration we never knew we needed. Kelly and Keith equals class acts. What started as a fiery confrontation ended as a reminder of why both artists were beloved, not just for their voices, but for their humanity. Epilogue. The dust eventually settled, but the incident left its mark. Conversations about the pressures of reality TV continued in the industry, sparked in part by Keith's outburst. Kelly, meanwhile, strengthened her reputation as one of the most grounded and resilient figures in entertainment. As for Keith, he learned a humbling lesson: passion is important, but respect is greater. And though the confrontation had been messy, it ultimately brought him and Kelly closer, not just as colleagues but as friends. And the world, once divided over #Keith vs Kelly, finally agreed on one thing: sometimes, even in conflict, music has the power to bring people back together.